back to Dr. Noah's YouTube, and I have one of my favorite patients back, and she has really a unique story, as we just heard a couple minutes ago with the other Cheryl. You know, people come into my office with lots of different challenges, and it's really kind of inspiring to hear what can take place using natural types of approaches. And so, introduce yourself, start our story a little bit here.
My name is Cheryl Postuma, and in 1998, I was diagnosed with a prolactin pituitary tumor, which I no longer have. Thank you to Protandim,
right.
I would say.
And just tell me about how the story you went through, you were treated, you had reactions. So just tell us a story. So first of all, you're having problems, and I'm sure, how many doctors did you go to before you saw a specialist to find out that diagnosis?
Right. It took me, my daughter was born in 1991, my youngest. And if anybody's familiar with prolactin, it's the milk in your breasts, and it never dried up, never went away. So from 1991 until 1998,
7 years,
I would go back to my gynecologist, miserable. My body felt like it was in a tug of war with itself.
Okay, we'll talk about being miserable. Miserable to me could be different.
Miserable as my hormones were fighting against each other.
Now, how did you feel? I mean, what kind of exposure did you have for your family, yourself?
I have never been a larger person, and by the time I was diagnosed, I was on my way to a size 16. And I'm 5'11", so that's not large for me.
And right now you're what size?
An 8.
8, there you go.
But that was my normal size, and my patients were nil. My poor children, I would warn them that
Watch
my
out,
patients
mamas.
are this nil. And my mood swings were awful. My body felt like I was going through menopause and being pregnant at the same time. And men go through this. It's not just women. Men also have to deal with this. And not knowing what's going on.
So for 7 years, you're in this type of chaotic
my
type of
body's
sense,
in turmoil.
where every day you're not healthy, happy, people around you who love you.
Miserable is a nice word considering what my body was going through and my insides. Miserable is really a nice word. Finally, my prolactin levels were getting higher, in their 60s, in their 70s, in their 90s. And my gynecologist kept telling me that when it becomes 100 is when you have a tumor. And he was warning me.
That's where you're kind of going.
Thinking that that's where I was heading. But in black and white book terms, for a gynecologist, I have to wait till my prolactin level was 100. So it hit 111. And
7 years later.
Yeah, 7 years later. It took me that long. And so he sent me to an endocrinologist. My first endocrinologist was a joke, I'm sorry to say. On the verge of retiring and not wanting to take the time for his patients, put me on bromocriptine. Now, back then, I had very long hair. It was mid-back. And within the month that I went on bromocriptine, which I had to take every day, the side effects, my hair fell out to where it would just barely be shoulder length. I lost so much weight I was down to a size 4.
Now, at this point, the endocrinologist has diagnosed you with a pituitary tumor like that,
tumor,
right? And so now you're on
one pituitary tumor in my lobe, and your pituitary gland is in the shape of like a heart or a kidney bean. So I had one tumor in one of my lobes, and I had the MRI, the blood work, everything. So taking the medication, the side effects were awful. And in 3 months...
I think you're kind of a whiner, hair falling out. You're not tough. I think you're Xena the warrior.
My husband would tell you differently. He tells me I never whine.
I bet. So what other kind of side effects are you having? Not only just the hair loss.
The fatigue set in. You get chronic fatigue where you literally want to become a couch potato. You in your mind you want to get up and move, but your body is just not functioning. You can't. And I was a massage therapist at the time, and I think the only thing that kept me going is that I was also working with a nutritionalist on my diet to make sure I was eating the proper foods to get the energy. And even though it's a non-cancerous tumor, she treated it like it was cancer and put me on the foods that I should be on.
So there's two kinds of cancer. There's benign and there's basically malignant. But because of where it is, as well in other places of the body, benign can cause catastrophic type of problems. Because your brain is like a very hard type of vessel. Anything that starts to expand or puts pressure can cause, as you found out, terrible type of problems.
Right, right. And it was not bad enough to where I would need brain surgery, thank God. Which I would prefer to monitor it with medication.
Sure.
So 3 months into this misery and this weight loss and the hair loss, and I mean chunks of hair coming out in the shower, people would come up to me and ask me if I had a disease and if I was dying. I looked that bad. I went back to the doctor and asked if there was another medication, and he told me no, which there was, come to find out. Anyways, 6 months into this... Damn it, the internet, I just hate that. You can just find all kinds of information. There you go. 6 months into this, he had me do another MRI, which my tumor was dissolved. Well, that's because that's what the medication is for, to dissolve my tumor. So he said, okay, you can go off of it. This was in November of 98. So I weaned myself off the medication, and by January I could tell it was back. I had the same symptoms as before. And I will honestly say, for a full year I worked with a homeopathy doctor, and it didn't get me anywhere, really. I mean, it helped with other things, but it didn't get me anywhere as far as my tumor was concerned.
Which was your primary focus.
Right. So I found the Pituitary Tumor Network Association online, printed out their pamphlet, and called them and asked them if they had any doctors to recommend in California. Well, they recommended a doctor at UCSF in San Francisco. Great. So I went there.
Great university,
Right. I went there, made my appointment, went there, had another MRI, a bone density scan, and a lot of blood work. And by this time I had 2 tumors in my pituitary gland.
Well, you want challenges. You don't one's too easy. I mean,
of course.
And you probably still had some hair, so you just wanted
barely.
To. Yeah, there you go.
Barely, no monthly cycle.
So that must have been very, very challenging. Here you have 2 now versus 1. So that.
And my bone density is a low normal, so I'm in the warning zone. I'm in the yellow.
Which is completely reversible. Osteoporosis is, once again, not easily, but very, very comfortably be able to reverse.
Right.
So that's no big deal there.
So this doctor, who I begged not to put me on the medication, informed me that there was other medication out, and it's been out for 3 years. Okay, so how long? It was 2 years that I was first diagnosed before that. So this is 2000. And
I think that's a really important part, is that just like you want to go to a car mechanic, that it's up to date with the latest cars, not the 1950, he or she's really good fixing 1950s cars, but something that's in 2010, 11. Doctors need to do that, and I'm always kind of, bewildered, saying, well, how come other doctors aren't like you, that you scan the research, it's like, I don't know.
Put the efforts out.
You have to put the effort out, because you'd be like going to a car mechanic in the 50s. Maybe a very nice person, but that's not going to help you, because cars are different than the 1950s as they are in 2000.
Right.
So that must have been frustrating, is that for all those years, there were some other choices that you could
Because I begged this doctor not to put me on medication. And he says, well, we'll see what your bone density scan is. Well, because it was below normal, and it's a low normal, he says you have no choice. You have to be on the medication. Because when you don't have your monthly cycles, it takes the bone density out of your system. So I went on the medication. It was called Dostonex. And on this medication, there's much less side effects. There's like maybe 10 issues that come up, and I had 9 out of the 10. I couldn't tell you all of them, but one of them is IBS, chronic fatigue. IBS is irritable bowel syndrome, where your colon goes on and off. We have constipation, diarrhea. It's a terrible. On my YouTube, we had a 20-year-old young guy here. It was just terrible life, because he'd always have to be close to restaurants and to gas stations that had public restrooms. He really couldn't date that well, so it was devastating, because once again his system could go like that, and he would have to either have an accident, which is not too much fun when you're on a date,
poor have to find that, and that's not much of a date if you're mostly in the restroom. So,
right.
So within just 3 or 4 weeks, I was able to help him 80%, and now he's 100% better,
Good for him.
which is good for him. Yeah, he's happy about that. Mm-hmm. So
and
IBS is
also
a terrible
that
thing.
IBS and the constipation and it does cause hair loss and you find that your system doesn't work well. Your fingernails don't grow. Your hair doesn't grow back.
Sure.
It breaks off. Your skin doesn't look good when you're on medication. And besides, you don't have your monthly cycles. So not only was I on the Dostanex, I was also on Lunesta to help me sleep because it caused chronic fatigue. And even with that, I only had 5 hours sleep.
Right.
That was it.
And there have been recent studies showing that sleep is very superficial. You don't go really into the deep restorative type of sleep. So even though you seem like you're going to sleep, people still wake up. Yeah, I'm not as tired, but I'm still really fatigued because it's a kind of an artificial sleep.
Right. Right. And then I would also be on Prilosec for my stomach, and then on birth control to help me maintain my hormone levels and a monthly cycle that I should be doing. And on top of all that, this all had to be regulated. So it took me between 2 to 3 years to figure out. I started off with 1 pill twice a week. Then a few months down the road, it kept my prolactin level within the range, but it still went from a 16 to a 22, back down to an 18, up to 25, and I could feel it. I didn't feel good.
Well, these are very powerful type of chemicals in your body. Hormones or the endocrine system is a very powerful thing. So little bit of changes can have dramatic type of both positive or negative impact on your body.
Right, and it was a struggle. It was a lifetime struggle that I didn't ask for. That I was blessed with, I guess you might say.
Well, this was a challenge for you, right?
And my family had to deal with it, which, I really, really tried. They would tell you sometimes, Mom, and I didn't think it was, sometimes your emotions were a little over the top, and you're not realizing it because you're living with it every day.
Right.
So, and you're trying to maintain and have a normal family life that
relationships and
exactly.
Things like that.
So anyways, we finally ended up that I was taking 1.5 pills twice a week, and mind you, thank goodness for my insurance because it would be about $800 a month to be on this medication if I did not have insurance.
Just for that, not the MRIs to see the specialist, which is usually $2,000 to $3,000 for a visit like that. Which what are they doing for that? Anyway, it's another question.
Right.
Never
just for the medication, period. That's not including the other medications that I was on either.
Well, little side note, there was just yesterday, there was a big panel about a breast cancer medication that Genentech makes that's $10,000 a month, and they finally realized, hey, it doesn't even work. So at least it was helping you. There are things out there that have a lot more serious side effects, a lot more cost, and have that kind of difficulty.
Right. So finally, I think I was able to maintain a semi-normal life and help my children grow up. I have 3 children.
Nice.
Help them grow up, and they're all adults now. And a grandson I have, and just recently, my niece Nicole Bridge was calling me on the phone. Auntie, I have something that I want you to try. No. I take too many pills as it is, and it's all natural, and just look at the information. It took her months to convince me, and as natural as I am, I was just ornery about it.
Well, you're just overwhelmed. I mean, you had so much going on. I mean, you just wanted to have one more thing to kind of do.
Right.
So that's pretty common.
So finally, I agreed to go to a meeting. And I did 2.5 hours worth of research on Protandim, which is from LifeVantage. I could not find anything wrong with it. Not one thing.
Well, it's 5 herbs by, as you and I know, Dr. McCord, who's the discoverer of a whole field called free radical biology. It's, again, it brought into the scientific realm what antioxidants and free radicals are about. So he was the discoverer of that. And over 40 years, he wanted to kind of give back to society something that would, once again, help basic principles of all diseases, over 200 of them. So he created this Protandim, 5 herbs, and then...
So I figured, what the heck? I'll give it a try.
Right.
I started taking it in in August.
And it's 1 pill a day.
Of last year.
Didn't cost you $800 a month. It cost you $40 a month. Oh my goodness.
Right. And I found that it made me a little sleepy, which was good. So I started taking it in the evening. And now that was like the 3rd week of August I started. By the end of December, this is still last year, 2010, by the end of December, I started getting lower back pain. So my sister says, well, maybe you have a bladder infection. Go to the doctor. Nope, no bladder infection. Then it's going up my back, into my kidneys, and I mean, it's really uncomfortable. Uncomfortable to sit, uncomfortable function. I found myself sitting on a heating pad. February 26th, I can tell you the exact date. I woke up one morning with my face and my hands so swollen I was unrecognizable. And I mean, when I say swollen, people don't realize that my nose was 4 times bigger than what it is. My eyes were swollen shut. My lips looked like I had collagen put in them. So I immediately called my doctor because I know that that's a side effect of my medication. So I called my gynecologist, and she set me up with an appointment with an endocrinologist because I didn't have one anymore. I was maintaining, and my gynecologist was keeping it under control, doing various MRIs and blood work and all the information needed to make sure that I was maintaining a proper level with my pituitary. So finally, like I said, I take the pill twice a week. Well, I was taking it Sunday nights and Wednesday nights. I was still waking up swelling on Thursday morning. So I cut back to 1 pill twice a week, and I was still waking up swelling. Well, then I decided to cut back to a half of a pill, and I was still waking up swelling. To the point I couldn't put any rings on. It was still uncomfortable. And what I did was I decided, it was March 13th, okay, I'm done with this. I'm not taking the medication anymore. Haven't been able to get into the endocrinologist yet. Had my appointment April 15th, so I went in to see her, talked to her about it, and that month that I was off the medication, I felt fine. I felt wonderful. And still taking the Protandim, never stopped. So the endocrinologist put me through a series of bone density, MRI, and blood work. And everything came back to where I was in really good shape. My bone density was still a low normal because I'm sure it takes time to build that up after you've been that way for 12 years. I've been on the medication. When the endocrinologist told me I would be on it for the rest of my life. And that's what I would have to deal with. Well, after I was off the medication, I'm feeling wonderful. All the tests came back. I'm great. Everything's good. I decided to come see Dr. Noah. I met him through LifeVantage because the medication still stays in your system. So Dr. Noah has put me on a detox for 30 days. And actually, I've been on it for a week, and I've already lost 5 pounds to get the medication out of my system. Even to the point it's changed so much that I was recently at a family wedding, and my family was trying to accuse me of having facial work done because I look different. I look healthy. I look much younger, apparently, than before. And my husband's saying, no, she's had no work. She's still the age she is. But everything's fine. I feel wonderful, and I contribute it to Protandim because that is the only thing that I have done different. The only thing. And like they say, no matter what, it helps fight free radicals, and what your body does with it after that is what your body chooses to do. Well, my body chose to heal itself.